May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as submitted?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then we have one absent. Okay, the board will now recess to closed session to discuss public employee performance and evaluation of the superintendent and public employee discipline, release and dismissal. And we will Is there anyone to speak to these items?
No virtual comments.
Okay, we will now recess to closed session and return at approximately 6 o'clock.
Hey,
Let's see.
good, busy week. Long week, even though we had the extra day of the weekend, it's like, so much. I think I'll just take that. Oh, yeah. Yes.
I was at the budget thing yesterday and was next to somebody who did deposit, so. So fortunately, I feel fine, but just trying to follow the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to the regular board meeting. I'm excited to get started today after returning from winter break. With that in mind, I'd like to forewarn you all that more than likely you will see me fuddle with points of order and procedure today, as I'm the new president. And I only ask that you all please lend me a little bit of grace as I get my bearings on this new position. So first off, there are many opportunities for the public to address the board. Public hearings, public comment, or during a specific agenda item. If you wish to speak to the board, please complete the request to speak card in the front and provide it to the recording secretary. If you are joining the meeting on Zoom, please select the raise your hand feature in order to have your name called when the agenda item is reached. In-person speakers will be called to the podium first, followed by Zoom attendees. And when it is your turn to speak, you will have 3 minutes to speak. The Brown Act governs meetings of the governmental bodies in California. Your comments to the board will be specific to the agenda item you are addressing. If there is no specific item, you are welcome to present comments during public hearing. Please note that you are attending a public meeting of the Board of Trustees doing the public's business. This is not a public forum for public debate. Member Pacheco, will you please provide the land acknowledgement?
We acknowledge that the Oak Grove School District and our schools occupy the unceded territory of the Muwekma Nation, a sovereign nation and original people of the skies, land, and waters where we work and learn. The Muwekma people are the stewards of these lands and of the teaching and learning that comes from and responds to the needs and land of the people who share it. In our daily lives and work, research, teaching, community engagement, support the evolving vision of the Muwekma for their community and these lands. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Member Pacheco. Superintendent Manzo, will you please lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And Superintendent Manzo, will you please provide the superintendent's report?
Lost my spot. Go. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. Hope everybody, as President Gonzalez mentioned, everybody had an opportunity to rejuvenate, spend some time with loved ones and family, and welcome back to 2024. This is also a time where we're still in cold and flu season, and just a reminder for all of us as we do our work to continue to practice those safe practices that we're so good at during 2 years of us being together in our schools during COVID. So remember to please take care of yourself. I had an opportunity to have our Student Advisory Council earlier on January 11th, last Thursday. Is it last Thursday? New Year, so it's a blur still a little bit, isn't it? But we had a great conversation. Two of the topics that we discussed was artificial intelligence and social media. And so we were talking about ChatGPT and social media and the impacts of social media, and really had an interesting discussion, a very good discussion around, what are some of the pros and then some of the challenges that technology brings to us, and it wasn't too long ago when, we had a camera and a video camera, and we had a calculator, and then we had, a map that we pulled out and looked at, and we had a phone that we had to go to. And so now we have this, right? And so there are different elements of technology that evolve and that simplify and improve our lives. But along with that, part of our conversation are You know, in the education context, what are some of the things that we can do to better support what happens in schools with that interaction and that interplay with our students and our schools? Because we do want information and we do want access. We don't want to remove access to information that is so important, but then how do we manage that information and that access so it continues to be safe and it continues to be appropriate for learning and extending our learning? So I'm anxious for our next opportunity to continue that discussion. And actually, our next meeting, our educational technology team will be joining us for part of that discussion as well. And today, we have the honor of recognizing some very special people. We have our Vision Awards, Maximum Use of Resources, that we will be recognizing today. Just as a reminder, we'll be recognizing the individuals here, but we'll be also sharing that information on our social media. So there'll be something that will be sent out to all of our employees. You'll see a picture in my Friday or my Monday communication that goes out to the entire community, where we highlight all of our maximum use of resources recipients today. So thank you all that are here to support and to acknowledge our wonderful employees and staff members that we'll be honoring today. As part of doing this recognition, I'm going to ask our board to come to the front of the dais, and our Associate Superintendent of Educational Services is going to help us with reading off the names and then also sharing the criteria for the award as well. So if you wouldn't mind joining us.
All right, so as we give time for our Board of Trustees to take their places in front of the dais with our superintendent, I'll read out the criteria for the Vision Award, Maximum Use of Resources. The first criteria is actively seeks out and creatively plans for maximum use of time and money and the effective use of human and material resources in the school and community. Secondly, effectively plans and implements for the best use of resources. And lastly, provides ongoing and constructive evaluation of the use of resources and the impact of the planned use for students, the classroom, and or the school environment. So really just a lot of intentional thinkers and maximizing our resources of the district. And so first from Anderson School, contracted speech and language pathologist, Joseph Bowles. From Baldwin Elementary School, HASC parent volunteer, Liza Latona. Also from Baldwin Elementary School, speech and language pathologist, Linda Peterman. Great cheering section. All of our recipients have also received their certificates, have been sent to their respective sites as well. So if you haven't received those yet, please look out for those from your site administrator. From Burnell Intermediate School, history teacher, Avenir Guevara. From Christopher Elementary School, resource specialist, Courtney Hunter Quevedo. Also from Christopher School, lead custodian, Rick Talamantes. From Edenville Elementary School, second grade teacher, Anessa Bach. Congratulations. From Educational Services, Instructional Assistant at Christopher and DLAC Representative, Maria de Los Angeles Jimenez de Serrano. Also from Educational Services, Community Liaison 2 and School Link Services Coordinator, Sochi Macias. From Frost Elementary School, English Learner Teacher Partner, Instructional Assistant, Monique Cabral. From Frost and Indigo Base Program, Child Care Leader 2, Therese Lalou. From Ledesma Elementary School, second grade teacher, Lori Jo Short. From Sakamoto School, second grade teacher. We are really recognizing the second grade teachers tonight. All right. Second grade teacher from Sakamoto, Michelle Scheid. And from Taylor Elementary School, itinerant resource specialist teacher, Kyle Santomaro. Congratulations to all of our Vision Award recipients for maximum use of resources.
And I will now do that. If you can come up again and we'll share one more picture.
Thank you again for everybody here and congratulations to all of our recipients for maximum use of resources. Also, this month is Board Appreciation Month, and just wanted to personally thank our board for all of their work, their commitment to our district, to our students, to our families, their dedication, giving of their time, making decisions that many times are very challenging and difficult, but that are in the best interest of our district. There's recognition of the selflessness of all of our board, and we just want to personally thank you all for your leadership, your commitment to the work, and your commitment to supporting our students, our staff, and our parents. And then lastly, excuse me, at our last meeting in December, during the organizational part of our meeting, excuse me, we recognize, thank you. we recognize the tenure of our past president for a couple of years, and we also failed to do something that I think was also very important, and that was to recognize our previous president that served during COVID. And as you remember, during COVID, everything was virtual, everything was not in person in the setting, and so those transitions were not, we didn't follow the traditional type of things that we did in recognizing the leadership of our president during that most difficult time of our work as a district. And so we want to take the opportunity to appropriately recognize our past president, Trustee Jorge Gonzalez, and my sincere apologies for that oversight and not being able to provide that recognition during that phase of leadership that was so critical and crucial to our school district. And during a time that I think we did exemplary work with so much chaos and confusion all throughout our county, I think we were a model of some of that work that worked well within with our labor groups and with our board together. And so in recognition of your leadership of our district and your service as our president, congratulations and thank you.
Definitely did not expect that. Thank you so much to you and to the Oak Grove family. This really means a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah. President Gonzalez, that concludes my report.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, congratulations to our award recipients. Thank you so much to my board, and congratulations and thank you so much for your leadership, Member Pacheco. So the board met in closed session to discuss public employee performance evaluation of the superintendent, and no action was taken. Public employee discipline, release, and dismissal, and no action was taken. We'll now move to public comment. This is an opportunity for individuals to address the board on any school-related issue, which is not a part of this evening's agenda. Are there any individuals who wish to speak to the board at this time? Any online?
There are no virtual comments.
Okay. Seeing no comments, we will move on to bargaining unit comment. Do we have any reports from bargaining unit representatives?
Sorry. I think we skipped section 4.1, the public hearing.
Okay, we will now have our public hearing on item 4.1, notice of energy savings project to replace plumbing fixtures.
So I'd like to have our Associate Superintendent, Mr. Evans, introduce this item. This item is part of the action items on later in the agenda, but is part of the requirement for a public hearing. We're presenting it in both locations in order for any comments to be made during the public hearing portion of the meeting. Mr. Evans?
Thank you. The public hearing for the energy savings projects to replace the plumbing fixtures is part of Government Code 4217, which allows us to proceed with the design build, similar to what we did last time regarding the improvements at Baldwin. The plumbing fixture and appliance program is one of the 2 grant programs under the School Energy and Efficiency Stimulus Program, and it authorizes local education agencies to replace plumbing fixtures and appliances just to bring them up to newer standards and higher efficiencies. Back in May of 2023, the district was awarded $478,635 in grant funding to complete the plumbing fixture replacements. We estimate that the energy savings will be over 3,000 kilowatt hours a year, over 750 million gallons of water, and about $8,000 a year in savings financially. We're going to partner with LifeWings. It's a consultant we've worked with in the past on Assembly Bill 841 energy efficiency projects. And we're asking for the board's approval when we come to the action item 7.2. But for now, opportunity for public to address the board regarding this project.
Okay, we'd now like to open the public hearing. Are there any people who wish to speak on this item? Seeing
There are
none.
no-
Sorry,
there
Rochelle.
are- There are no virtual comments.
Great, thank you so much. I will now close the public hearing and we can move on to bargaining unit comment. Do we have any reports from bargaining unit representatives today?
Good evening, everyone. I only have a couple announcements real quick. As for CSEA, I just wanted to announce that I am assuming the role of president for CSEA. Maria had to step down. There's nothing wrong. There wasn't any conflict or strife or anything. There's nothing to be alarmed about. She just had family commitments and the role was becoming too busy. And her and I talked and I was willing to step up and take over as the vice president. So now I will be the president. So you guys have all heard me speak before, but I'll briefly introduce myself. I'm Chuck Baylott. I work in the business department as an accountant. I was the CSEA president for 4 years prior to Maria's term, and I've been the vice president for the last year. So I do have experience in this. I've worked with the same executive team. Mark came in at the end of my term and I was kind of a short timer and probably didn't deal with Mark as much union wise, but he's my boss. So I do know him very well. So I'm sure I can work with Mark too, but I've worked with Amy and Yvonne and Jose for years and already had a meeting with HR. It was a very productive meeting. I liked what I heard. Maria kept me pretty involved, not as involved as I was before, but she kept me pretty involved. So I don't think there's much I have to catch up on. For chapter announcements, I'm going to wait till the next time around till I get more under my feet. But I look forward to working with all of you, and that's it. And Vice President Jaco and President Gonzalez, welcome to your new roles and congratulations. Sure, you'll do fine. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Maripaz Berlin, the president of Oak Grove Educators Association. Happy New Year and happy belated I Love Public Schools Day, which was yesterday. So I want to give you some updates. For community schools, we have reached out to Superintendent Monzo to have further discussions to discuss further like what steps we need to take in order to connect with families and school staff about the needs and assets at their school site, which we'll be scheduling sometime this month. I was able to attend the governor's budget presentation yesterday in Sacramento. And though there will be some reshuffling in the California budget, the budget for the community schools partnership program will not be touched. So I do feel the urgency for us to do the work in order to connect with the families and the school communities in order to get the data that we need in order to proceed. In terms of our political action, our Santa Clara County Service Center Council will be hosting its annual school board dinner. So thank you for responding, board members, and we look forward to getting together with you on February 6th. Because it is a social event, it is allowed in the Brown Act. So as an update for special ed, last month I had shared that we had 14 positions in the special education department staffed with contractors. In the budget presentation yesterday, that was something that was included in the presentation. And we did learn that not only is there special ed staffing crisis here, but it's also everywhere. and that LEAs are also having to use a lot of contractors and vendors to fill the spots in order to deliver services to our students, and to fill vacancies and all that. So in that sense, we do have the staff and the people to fill those spots. They're being employed by contractors. I do understand that we do have some that are coming over from other countries. But I think that kind of highlights a deeper look overall from different vantage points, how we need to relook at and restructure what SPED looks like in Oak Grove. So for us, as a school district, and for all school districts, it does cost more in the long run. And the workers do not have the union protections and solid support if they are working with a contractor or a vendor. Because a part of being a contract worker is you, some of your funding or some of your wages do go to that company. And there is a little bit of flexibility there, but it's not as stable, and there's more mobilization, and they can't negotiate like we can collectively. So the staffing issue is not going away and will need to be tackled on different levels. So from like the local, from here, but also county and state. One of you hopefully may make it to the county. And that can be a way in for us to continue having those discussions. And I have some connections also with the county, and I think this is one of those things that we need to work together on. It can't be just localized because there's a lot of overlap in the work that we do with students and families. So we need to look at the workloads at our level, professional development, what are we offering for our SPED staff, both classified and certificated? And I know I'm not the representative for certificated, but our work, we work with similar folks. So I wanted to share that. Salary and hourly for both classified and certificated. What does that look like? What's a way we can improve that? Program design and other supports. In the budget presentation yesterday, they shared some of the trends that are happening in the salary or in the hourly wages, and some of the trends have been that there have been some benefits that have been offered to part-time classified workers. So I think it bears to mind that there's a lot of things that we can look at and try to see if that is something that can work for Oak Grove and for our community. In terms of working conditions, I was very pleased to see that there is possibly, pending your approval, a voluntary retirement program for our educators. Item 7.1. So I wanted to share some facts with you to reflect on as to the depth of service of some of our educators in Oak Grove. I'm not sure if it's been shared with you, our seniority list. 1976. I'm pretty sure with the board members that we have now, none of y'all were born yet at that time, but we had somebody teaching at that time. That was 47 years ago. 1988, 35 years ago. 1991, I'm sure you all were still not born yet, but that was 30. That was 30, or you're all looking pretty good. I'm sorry, that does not. But I didn't call you out there. That was you. 1991, 32 years ago, and on and on. So we have a number of really dedicated, committed educators in Oak Grove, and they've chosen to be here. And it's not been easy, but it is a district that has a lot of heart, and I'm happy to see that is continuing in this room. So some folks may be ready to move on and some may not. So just to recognize that this is not a way to urge folks out, but as a way to acknowledge their service and as a way for them, if they choose to, there is an option for them. So pending your approval. At this time, this concludes my report.
Thank you so much, President Berlin. We will now move on to the consent agenda. Superintendent Monzo, will you please present on the consent?
Thank you, President Gonzalez. I'd like to recommend the board approve the consent agenda items as submitted.
May I have a motion in a second?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public to address the board on this item? Seeing none in person, are there any online?
No.
Thank you. Okay, is there any board discussion? Okay, seeing no other discussion, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Jaco,
Aye.
President Gonzalez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. We will now move on to action item 7.1. Resolution number 1451, OGSD Voluntary Retirement Program. Superintendent Monzo, will you please present on this item?
Yes, thank you. Item 7.1, as referenced by President Berlin, we're happy to bring this resolution to board for consideration, and also it's been probably several years that we've been discussing this with Mighty Boss and us as a district. And so I think we are in a place where we feel comfortable in bringing this offering to our employees. And as was mentioned, it's a recognition of the tremendous dedicated service that our employees, our staff members here in Oak Grove have given to our community, to our students here in Oak Grove. And so I'd like to introduce Dr. Ivan Chaitis and Associate Superintendent Mark Evans, who will be further introducing this item and presenting to the board. Dr. Chaitis.
Thank you, Superintendent Monzo. Good evening, Board President Gonzalez and members of the board. We're excited. We're excited to bring this item to the board today for approval of our voluntary retirement program, also referred to as VRP. So that's another acronym, Voluntary Retirement Program, VRP, which, like Superintendent Monzo said, is a celebration of our employees and a recognition of their work serving our students. I've been now in HR for about 3 years, for about the past 3 years in conversations with OGA. OGA has expressed an interest in offering this incentive to its members. So in the spirit of collaboration, Associate Superintendent Evans and I met with 3 different vendors, 3 different companies that facilitate this process, and exploring at this voluntary retirement program incentive. From the 3 vendors, we selected Highmark as they were the most flexible. And we've also have worked with them in previous retirement incentives that the district offered. This voluntary retirement program will be offered to our current certificated and management employees who will be 55 years old and older by June 30th, 2024, and have been with our district for 5 consecutive years or more. In addition, I have spoken with AFSCME President Mike Pointner, and most recently last week, met with CSEA President Chuck Baylock and discussed about offering our classified employees an early TAL, what they call an early TAL incentive as well. So I will be working on the details collaboratively with Chuck and Mike, our association classified presidents. And also I want to let the board know that, currently we are fully staffed in all of our classrooms. We do have a few, we have over 1,000 employees, and we do have a few that we contract with. But I also want to just reiterate that we're confident that we will be able to recruit and hire certificated and management employees to fill any vacancies that might come from these incentive. Also offering this incentive now with a March 15 deadline, it allows us, our HR team, to start recruiting now and hiring during the important recruitment season so that we can fill the vacancies with qualified candidates. Through our positive relations that we have with the local universities, San Jose State, Santa Clara, and other universities, we have established a strong pipeline of future teachers. We've already begun interviewing our student teachers and our resident teachers for next school year. And we've made job offers already for next year. So we're already ahead of the game. We're also going to be attending several events for recruiting. So yeah, this is something that, again, like Superintendent Monzo, is a recognition of our members that have been serving our students. I'm going to pass it over to Associate Superintendent Mark Evans, and he's going to discuss more of the financial details of what does it look like. Mark?
Thank you. If we could go to the first page of the presentation. Many of these items were already addressed by Assistant Superintendent Chaidez, and Dr. Chaidez talked about the eligibility requirements and the incentive benefits. So the economic engine, the driving force that kind of develops a delta that helps the district save funds and honor our employees who are moving on to the next chapter, is kind of that differential between what an average employee who's eligible for this program, earning $170,000, $173,000, and where we tend to hire and replace our employees. These numbers are not salary, they're total compensation. So they include pension costs, health and welfare, statutory benefits like workers' comp and unemployment insurance and all. So there's about a $70,000 delta between the employees who are at retirement age and those who we will most likely be hiring to replace them. One of the goals is to generate enough interest so that we get that delta and make the savings work. So that's why there's a minimum participation threshold of 20 participants. But if you go to the next slide, I think you'll see that we do the study of who is eligible, and looking at the members of OGEA and management, there are 85 members of OGEA and 10 members of management who would qualify under our guidelines of 55 or older and 5 years of experience. And then they've broken that down into the age spans over 65, 60 to 65, and under age 60. One of the things we have to look at, though, is as we do this, what is the benefit and what is the natural? And so the boxes at the bottom really kind of show you the normal attrition is how many we would expect naturally to retire with or without the incentive. And the estimates are 8 certificated and 1 management. Our goal is to increase that to 20. Whether the breakdown is exactly the way they presented it or not, we don't know, but we do want a minimum of 20. So are there any questions on this slide I can answer for you? Okay. Let's go ahead and move to the next one.
And again, just to highlight that number, because folks online might be seeing that, and it says 173,000. Again, that's including the cost of benefits, the cost of contribution for the STRS contribution that the district makes on salary. So if you recall, the contribution for STRS for the retirement, the California State retirement, is 19% of salary. So whatever the salary is, for example, if it's 100,000, 19,000 is also contributed to the retirement for STRS. And so that's included all in that number, because we would have to pay that for a retiree or a new employee as well. Of course, because it's based on base salary, that contribution is less for a newer employee than it would be for a retirement employee. So this is something that we wanted to make sure to highlight the difference, that people don't misunderstand or misinterpret that number and say, hey, wait a second, I don't make that kind of money. And so, thank you.
Sure. No, thank you for that clarification, because when we look at things, we tend to look at total compensation of salary and benefits, because that's the equation that we have to deal with. So a sample, if an employee receives a 65% voluntary retirement program benefit, and their base salary is 117,000 and change, they would be eligible for just over, $76,500 basically. And the way the plan works is each year, 20% of that would be available to the employee to use as they see fit. And they would work with Highmark on how they want that distribution to happen, or if they want that distribution to accumulate to the next year, they can do their own financial planning. But the total benefit over the 5 years is over $75,000. So this is how the plan works. And when people opt to retire and take advantage of this opportunity, there will be sessions where they'll talk as a group and then have individual counseling sessions to work with retirees on how they might want to implement it and the options they'll have. And the next slide kind of introduces the timeline that we're looking at, assuming board approval of the resolution. And I'll let Dr. Chaidez finish up with the timeline.
Thank you, Associate Superintendent Evans, for going over the slides. So just a couple of just the details of the implementation timeline pending approval from the board on this resolution. If approved this evening, the enrollment window opens tomorrow. So tomorrow it opens up, and tomorrow we will also be sending out an announcement letter with information, with dates, for those individuals that qualify. Next week, we're planning on having our first informational meeting. So Highmark will be present. That's going to be next Thursday, January 25th, here in the boardroom at 3:45. So these details will be coming out tomorrow, pending approval. And then next Tuesday, January 30th, at Herman Adventure Intermediate School in the multipurpose room, will be another opportunity to meet at 3:45 in case they could not attend the 25th. From there, Highmark will have individual counseling sessions with each employee to discuss, their situation, and, everybody are in different places in their salary, their retirement. So those meetings will happen individually. The enrollment window will close on Friday, March 15th. And then the retirement will take place in June. And most likely we will celebrate them on May 1st for our employee recognition dinner over at Villa Ragosa. So that's May 1st. Save the date, everybody. And with this, we recommend that the Board of Trustees approve resolution number 14510124, voluntary retirement program for certificate and management staff. Thank you, President Gonzalez.
Thank you so much. May I have a motion in a second?
I move to approve resolution number 1451-01/24, OGSD Voluntary Retirement Program.
I second.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address the board on this at this time? Seeing none in person, are there any online?
No virtual comments?
Thank you so much. I'll now open it up for board discussion.
This may be a dumb question, but what would be the difference? Again, because I guess like retirement is still something I'm trying to grapple with myself as a future retiree. But without the VRP, what would how much percentage of their income would they have available to them?
That's an individualized question depending on how many years they have of service and STRS and their age at the retirement. Those are the primary components. Your multiplier factor, your age, and your years of service are the three things that go together to calculate your benefit. So if you've been here 30 years and you're 60 years old, the multiplier is 2 with a little incentive of 0.2. So it'd be 2.2 times 30 And then they would base that on your salary. That'd be a percentage of your salary. So it'd be 66% of your salary. But it varies. We can have teachers who are into their 60s, but only have 25 years of service because they started late in life, maybe after dealing with, raising a family and stuff. So it is a variable. I think the average STRS retirement is about 60% of salary, if I remember correctly, and just kind of statewide.
So that's why the 65% is just.
So that one-time benefit, particularly if you're bridging some time or you still have some family expenses, that helps cover those in those first 5 years.
Great, thanks.
I have a logistical question. I see here where, of course, we have the enrollment window that opens and then closes. Is there any language, or how has it worked in the past in terms of people enrolling but then rescinding, perhaps, or not wanting to retire at the end of this? Is there language that doesn't allow for people to rescind their intent to be a part of this program? Just because I know we need that threshold of 20, so I'm just curious of the different scenarios.
Yeah, and this is not just for this incentive, and we've done 2 other incentives in the 12 years or so that I've been here. And so the way this works is that once you submit your all your forms for retirement, it's irrevocable unless it doesn't go through, unless the VRP does not move forward, because it is really important to know whether we meet the threshold or not for us to be able to offer the incentive. And so if people are not committed to that retirement based on the conditions of what is being offered, then it makes it really difficult to understand if we're meeting that threshold by that timeline. And so now, if for whatever reason we don't get the 20, then all of those retirements would be withdrawn. And then if somebody still wanted to retire, they would have to resubmit and just say, yes, I still want to move forward and retire without the incentive. And so, but once somebody submits the retirement for participating, it's irrevocable, it's accepted immediately, and it's only reversed if the offer is not moving forward.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, is there any other board discussion? Seeing none, may I have a roll call vote?
Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Jaco,
Aye.
President Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I think we might have somebody.
But you're not allowed to retire. Not approved.
Thank you.
Amazing. Okay. Now moving on to action item 7.2, energy savings project to replace plumbing fixtures. Superintendent, will you please present on this item?
Yes, as mentioned earlier, this was part of the public hearing, so I'll turn it back over to Mr. Evans. It's the same information, but just turn it over in case you needed to add anything else.
Nothing else to add, but if you have any questions that you've come up with since then, I'll be glad to address those. But most of them will simply be plumbing or fixture replacements, not glamorous, but efficient.
Thank you. May I have a motion in a second?
Okay. I move that the Oak Grove School Board approves item 7.2 energy savings project to replace plumbing fixtures as an energy conservation project.
Second.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public to address the board on this item? Seeing none in person, are there any online?
No virtual comments.
Thank you. Any board discussion? Okay, we can go ahead and move forward for a roll call vote.
Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Jaco,
Aye.
President Gonzalez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Great. We will now move on to action item 7.3, resolution number 1452-01-24. Emergency declaration, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning vandalism at Stipe Elementary. Superintendent Monzo?
Thank you, President Gonzalez. There was a report related to this incident in the past. This is a follow-up to some of the damage that was created at Stipe Elementary. As we have done with projects involving modernization and or improvements to our facilities, we'd like to present items 7.3 through 7.6, and then pause after explanation of each of those items for any questions or any public comment or any comments from the board. And if the board is in agreement, we would take 7.3 to 7.6 as one action item. But again, we'll explain each of those items individually for any questions and comments as well. Would that be okay with the board? Okay, great. So I'll turn it over to Associate Superintendent Evans to present each of those items.
Thank you. Item 7.3, the resolution number 1452-0124, the emergency declaration, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning vandalism at Stipe. We did a report back in December when the vandalism initially took place. It was the weekend, the first weekend in December. And there were 4 units severely impacted and impacting the heating and air conditioning for 4 classrooms. Because we consider that a vital necessity for kind of keeping the classroom operating, especially as we get to rainy season and the cold and winter. We're going to ask for this emergency declaration to move right ahead. Public Contract Code allows us in the cases of emergencies to proceed with repairs without going through the formal bidding process. And we had the contractor who installed the units, because the work was done over the last 2 summers, come out and give us a bid on those. So we're seeking approval for this resolution to move forward with this emergency declaration so that we can go into repairs immediately. The estimate is just shy of $100,000 to repair the damage, but we have also filed an insurance claim to hopefully offset some of those costs. Are there any questions regarding the emergency declaration? Okay. All right, then I'll move on to item 7.4. This is the approval of ADIS, an architecture firm we are asking to engage them for the Herman Intermediate modernization. Because of Measure P, we have the opportunity to modernize our campuses, and we're going to start with some work at Herman Intermediate School. That's one of the initial campuses we'll be starting with. And in order to kind of act on this commitment, the district's proposing scope of work to be done by ADIS. That'll prioritize code compliance, safety and security issues, renovations of restrooms and associated site development. There will also be replacement of interior floor and wall finishes, reconfiguration of power outlets for technology and other needs, HVAC replacement where necessary. The preliminary construction budget, we're estimating at about $7.5 million with another $2.5 million for soft costs, which is design, permitting, a lot of other non-direct construction costs. And the architectural fees for this project are $840,000, just a little above 10%. And that would be funded by the bond measure. Are there any questions I can answer regarding ADIS's contract? Okay. The next is for another architecture firm to be engaged. We've started work, actually haven't started work, but we have approved the plan to proceed with the HVAC replacement at Baldwin. While we're doing that, we also want to do the work to the roof. The district maintenance team kind of has had a lot of roof leaks at Baldwin, and we had the Garland Company do an inspection. That came through a completed inspection in end of September last fall, basically. And we have plans to upgrade the roof, improve it, replace the shingles, and the Finney architecture firm will be engaged to design that. The estimate for that roof work is about $2.3 million. and their costs come in just about 10% at $232,000 to do that work. May I answer any questions regarding Finney's contract? No? Okay. And then the last item regarding our facilities program relates to the electric vehicle charging infrastructure grant award. This was an award that we received for our electric buses and then the infrastructure to actually charge the electric buses. We went out to bid, and John Plumbing was the company that was awarded the project, and that'll basically be getting the infrastructure there so that the buses can pull in and get plugged in. This is a $260,000 project, and it'll be paid by the grant funds received for the electric vehicles and infrastructure. Any questions regarding that project?
Okay, great. With that, may I have a motion in a second?
Okay. I move that the Board of Trustees approve item 7.3, resolution number 142-01/24. Declaration of an emergency due to lack of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning at Stipe Elementary School. Item 7.4, the ADIS architect proposal for the modernization of Herman Intermediate. Item 7.5, the proposal for the Baldwin roof replacement. And lastly, item 7.6, the John Plumbing electric vehicle charging infrastructure project.
Second.
Thank you so much. Are there any public comments on this item? Seeing none in person, are there any online?
No virtual comments?
Thank you so much. Can we move to a roll call vote, please?
Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Jaco,
Aye.
President Gonzalez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Great. And that moves us to our last action item. Item 7.7, proposal for amendment to policy 3515, campus security surveillance systems.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. As you recall, we have installed video cameras at all of our campuses. And so this will help us with the policy related to the use of those cameras. So I'd like to have Associate Superintendent Mr. Evans further introduce this item.
Yes, thank you. The Board Policy 3515 relates to campus security. It's a relatively brief policy, the way it stands currently, with just a couple of paragraphs. But since we have added the cameras installed around our campuses to add security at our entrance points and exit points, we wanted to amend that policy to reflect practices and procedures with the surveillance equipment that we now have. The proposed amendment to the surveillance to policy 3515 explains how the system will be used to inform the public of the presence and the use of the camera surveillance system and how we will operate it as a district. We'll also, we've also included samples of signage we will post around the campuses to notify the public and that our campuses are on camera surveillance, closed circuit television. So open to any questions or comments regarding the policy that you may have as we move towards looking at this policy update.
Great. Thank you so much. May I have a motion in a second?
Or I make a motion, is the staff looking for the board to waive a second reading? Is that needed for this motion?
Since it is a board policy, it would require a second reading. And so we that would be part of the request for us to waive the second reading.
Okay.
If there are no amendments to the policy.
I didn't see that written here, so if everybody's okay with it, I'll make that motion. Okay. I move that the Board of Trustees adopt the proposal for amendment to the policy 3515, campus security surveillance systems, and waive the second reading.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Seeing none in person, is there any online?
No virtual comment?
Okay. Is there any board discussion? Okay, and seeing no board discussion, may I please have a roll call vote?
Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Jaco,
Aye.
President Gonzalez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you so much. And now we will be moving on to information items. Moving on now to 8.1 OGSD California dashboard results for 2023.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. As you know, we've provided updates related to our state testing and performance. And we're at a point where we are able to share the results for our dashboard factors as well. And so I'll have our Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Amy Bowles, introduce this item, as well as our director, who will be also presenting on this item as well.
Thank you, Superintendent Monzo. Trustees of the board, thank you for the opportunity to share this part 2 of summative data from last school year in terms of progress. You may recall earlier this year, we had the opportunity to come. Director Enna joined at that meeting as well to share some of the results of SBAC data, most specifically looking at that time at the data available to us, which is % of students meeting or exceeding standards or not meeting standards. And so this is that second layer of summative data, the state's accountability system, the California dashboard results. Just for a little bit of background, which may already reiterate some of the understanding you have about the California dashboard. In 2013, then Governor Brown signed the LCFF formula into law. And along with that, a new accountability system that was in its inception based on 2 principles. One, to provide resources more equitably to students with learning and socioeconomic barriers. And 2, to provide greater flexibility for educators to serve and respond to their students. So the California School Dashboard is that accountability system to provide a more complete picture on how schools are meeting the needs of students. The system measures school and district progress with 5 local indicators and 6 state indicators that include chronic absenteeism, suspension rate, English learner progress, academic performance in English language arts and mathematics, and for high school districts, graduation rates and college and career readiness. So in the fall, we only had the SBAC results, academic % at standard, but now we have a more complete picture to share with you from the California dashboard. So Director Enna is going to go into sharing this item in more depth. We're really excited to highlight some areas of growth and improvement just in the second year reporting post-COVID. But we also as well have opportunities for reflection and opportunities for further growth around these measurements. And so I'm going to turn it over at this time to Director Enna, our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and our Oak Grove Dashboard Coordinator. There you go.
All right. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Bowles, Superintendent Monzo, President Gonzalez, and Board of Trustees. I'm really excited to be up here to present the dashboard results to you. What's important about the dashboard results that's different from what I presented earlier in the year, which was the SBAC results, is that these there's an opportunity to look at a range of performance levels within the proficiency or students who are performing below proficiency. So we can look at growth, how far they've come from the previous year. And we can also look at other measures. So we look at our English learner progress, we look at chronic absenteeism and suspension rate. And so that the dashboard really is important for our community, for our school communities and for our district communities to see as a picture of, how our district is doing. Sometimes community members get information from, apps or websites that are privately owned or real estate. And this is where really our state accountability system, and this is where folks should be looking to assess and to see what's going on in terms of these indicators. So as Assistant Superintendent Bowles mentioned, we have our local indicators and our state indicators. I'm presenting to you on the state indicators today. Our local indicators, we rate ourselves on those, and I present those to you in June, along with our LCAP. And so the local indicators are part of the dashboard. You can find those on the dashboard website, but those have already been released because we presented them to the board. The state indicators weren't released until December 15th. So even though we had SBAC results far before that, the state is still doing their calculations and everything. And so they release those a little bit later. The hope is in future years, they're projecting that we'll be getting state indicators a little bit earlier in the year, which would be nice. So we'll look forward to that. So we look at all students, but we also look at student groups, and specifically the student groups that the state reports on are African American, American Indian or Native American, Asian, Filipino, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, white, 2 or more races, and then for special programs, English learners, students with disabilities, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, homeless, and foster youth. And those are the student groups that the state reports on. So we're going to be looking at data for all of these student groups, but there might be some gaps in the data. At the district level, we usually have data for almost all of the groups. At the site level, there might be gaps. If you go to the California School Dashboard website and you look up a specific school within our district, you might see no performance result, no performance color. And that's because they want to protect the privacy of our students. So if if there are 30 or more, then we'll get results and we'll get a color. If there are, except for foster youth and homeless, there's an exception at the LEA level. They only require 15 students or more. Student groups that have between 11 and 29 students, we will have results displayed, but there won't be a color. I'll explain the color in a minute. And if there are 10 or fewer students in a group, then there will be no data at all. So when those situations come up in our data, I'll reiterate that. They're just important to note that last year was our first year post-COVID of dashboard results. And so that was some baseline data for us because we did not have any state indicators for the year 2020 and 2021. So last year was a baseline, and now that we have 2 years of data, we have some growth, we have comparison data, and we can show change. So the model of the status and change is back. If you recall from last year, the metrics that were reported were displayed. We called them the cell phone bars. They were purple, and they were just little, like a little graph for each level. So now we have our grid is back, and so the grid is a way to determine the status and the change, and it comes up with a color, and that color is our performance level. There are several different grids. That was not the only grid. There's grids per if it's math or language arts or chronic absenteeism or suspension rate. They all have their own grids. And then there's different grids for different grade level spans. So I did link the grids there. But when we get to when I get to explaining the language arts and math, I'll show you the grids for those. Okay, so we're going to start with our academic indicators. And I'm just going to explain kind of how they come up with this status and change. So in the academic and in the SBAC results, the students, when they get a score, their score is a scale score. So they're not getting a score of 0 to 100, right? 100% being the top you could get. That's not the way that they're scored. Their scale score is a range somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 points. And for each grade level, for each assessment, math or language arts, there's a cut point that says, when a student gets this score, they're at standard. This score above is at standard. So there's a cut point for each one. So what the state does is we assess, they give a score. The score is measured from that cut point. How many points is it above that standard cut point, or how many points is it below that standard cut point? Then all the students are averaged, And so we have an average distance from standard. So that distance from standard is really important because we could have students who are below standard, but we've grown. So we look at that distance from standard and we compare it to the year before. So just as an example, so you can just see, these are actually the cut points for language arts as an example. Each grade level is slightly different. We don't memorize this, but so you can see that level 3 or MET standard has a different cut point. So we'll be looking at the distance from standard. Parents do get these scale score reports when they get their students' score report. So here's just an example. A student scored 2505, 2,505 was their scale score. So that would be 23 points below the lowest scale score in the standard MET range. So their distance from standard would be negative 23 points. Okay, so the ELA 5x5, so they have cut points for how many distance from standard points below or above, gives you a from very, very low to very high range. And then you have the change from the prior year and you meet those in the middle and that's our color. So that's how we get the colors. And the same thing for math, but they're different numbers. So we're going to look at our results now for OGSD. So you can see, and this is how it shows up on the dashboard website. It looks like a dial or like an odometer, and the colors are there. So red being very low, orange being low, yellow is in the middle, and then high is green and very high is blue. So, and then they give you results for all of the student groups. So overall in language arts, Oak Grove as a district for all students, we were 10.4 points below standard, and that was a result in orange because we declined from the previous year. You can see that we have one student group in red, and that is homeless. And then we have several student groups in orange, one student group in yellow. We have a few in green and one in blue. We have no performance color for American Indian as there were 9 students tested, and we have no performance color for foster youth as there were 7 students tested. So that data, that N size is too small to report. So looking at that in comparison to the previous year, you can see that with all of our student groups, out of all of them, we actually had 2 that increased 1 performance color, and that was our socioeconomically disadvantaged student group and our students with disabilities, our special ed student group. So those 2 increased 1 color. What's important to note here is that the rest of them maintained. So if we increased in 2 and the rest of the student groups maintained, why did we go down 1 performance color overall? And that's that distance from standard. So even if the student groups maintained, they could have gone down. Each one went down a little bit. There's a sort of a wiggle room in there where they, even if it's gone down a little bit, it could be maintained. And so overall, you add that all together, we can still go down because of the distance from standard. Okay. All right, let's look at math. So in math, our color was yellow. So we maintained because we did go up 2.2 points, but that was considered maintained. And we were still 24.3 points below standard. We outperformed the state. The state showed that the results were orange. And you can see that we did not have any student groups in red. We had 6 student groups in orange, 1 in yellow, 3 in green, and 1 in blue. And again, no performance color for American Indian, Native American, or foster youth. So looking at our comparison to the previous year, So you can see that there's all students. We went up one color. Several student groups maintained, but we increased by one indicator level for homeless students, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities. So math last year was a focus area for us. Our district curriculum team, representatives from all the schools, had some deep professional development in math. It was a board goal, and we did a lot of work around math. And so there we can see some improvement in our math indicator. All right, so we're going to move on to English Learner Progress Indicator. So this was something that was being built, and now it is fully complete. So what's new for 2023 is that they did change the cut points. They included a 5x5 grid to determine performance levels, and determined a methodology to incorporate the summative alternative LPAC into the indicator. So the alternative LPAC is for students with significant disabilities. There is an assessment for them. So English learners that so in our progress indicator, they have to have 2 years of summative LPAC results, because we have to measure from 1 year to the next how much they grew on that summative assessment. And students who are reclassified are not included in this data. So looking at that, another thing to note is that the LPAC is the English language proficiency assessment. The LPAC has 4 levels, but for the dashboard, it's actually broken up into 6 levels. So when they say they increased a level, it could be within level 2, from level 2 low to level 2 high. So they break out those 2 middle levels into a low and a high for each one. So there's actually 6 levels, more opportunities for growth for our English learners. Okay, so our English learner progress results, we're showing, so the color for Oak Grove School District was orange. 51.1 students made progress towards English language proficiency, which was a 2.7% decline. And you can see there's a breakdown there of students English learners who decreased one level, students who maintained, students who increased or who maintained level 4, and students who the purple at the top those are the students who progressed at least 1 level for 2022 and 2023. It's important to note here too that the impact of distance learning on our English learners is still being felt. It's being felt for all students, but particularly in terms of our English language development strategies and the work that the momentum that we had and the work that we built for SEAL implementation was very challenging to come across online. The developing the language acquisition, a lot of those in-person strategies, teachers did a beautiful job of making that work online, but it's not the same, and we know that. And the profile of an English learner in our district has diversified a bit. So there's more students who are multi-identified. We have students who are English learners and also homeless. We have students who are English learners and also have refugee status. So that just something to note and to provide a little context there. We know that is going to be continue to be an area of focus for us, so that we can get those our students continuing to make additional progress and moving up in their bands on their assessments. Another area that we focused on last year was chronic absenteeism. So here we have, we scored in the orange range for chronic absenteeism. We had 25.6% chronically absent last year. It was an improvement upon the previous year. And we have students in red, orange, yellow, and student groups there. No students in blue, and 1 student group with no performance color. So Why is there, let's go to the next slide. Interesting to note that while we didn't have a performance color for foster youth for math and language arts, we do now for chronic absenteeism. And that's because it includes students who are kinder first and second grade. So the assessment is only for third grade and up. That's a different number of students than you'll get when you start including kinder first and second graders. So still, we don't have enough students. There were 26 students who are Native American, American Indian. So that's not enough to give a performance color. And for foster youth, we had a total of 18. If you remember, that was the exception to the rule for foster youth and homeless. So we do have a color for them. So we can see across the board, we have lots to celebrate because we have a lot of gains here. So we went from very low. Actually, it flops for chronic absenteeism. So we're not talking about low, we're talking about high chronic absenteeism, or very high for all students. And then it went to high. So it increased one performance, one indicator level. We had 2 levels increase for African American, 2 levels for Asian, 1 for Filipino, 2 for Hispanic, 1 for 2 or more races, 1 for English learners, 1 for foster youth, and 2 performance levels each for homeless, low SES, and students with disabilities. This was an area of that we focused on for our targeted assistance last year. It was a board goal, and we celebrate that. We're continuing to monitor it. We actually look at it on a regular basis, and as of yesterday, we were at 19%. Okay. So for conditions and climate, this is our suspension rate. The suspension indicator shows orange for suspension. So that is 2.9% of students were suspended at least 1 day. So they don't measure the number of days a student suspended. They just, if a student suspended at all during the year, they're counted. This was an increase by a little less than 1%. And we have the same color as the state, but the state rate is a little bit higher. So we have, you can see that there were two student groups in the red, and we have 6 in orange, 1 in yellow, 1 in green, and no in blue. We have 1 student group with no performance color. So looking at the comparison, we actually went down 1 performance indicator level from the previous year in suspension rate, and either maintained or declined in all of the student groups there. Okay, so let's talk about the accountability systems, because the dashboard is not just providing results, but there's also systems of support that the state builds in, and those are accountability systems. So the one that we're most familiar with is differentiated assistance, because we were in differentiated assistance last year for chronic absenteeism and students with disabilities. And so this is our state system, and it's really, we design our own plan and plans of action. And so it's county led, we're supported by the county. And so last year, because of our increase and because of our growth in chronic absenteeism, we have a little celebration emoji there, because we're not in differentiated assistance for this coming year. So so that's good. And we're also continuing to monitor and make improvements so we don't get back there in the next year or future years. So the eligibility is they look at the student groups that are red on both ELA and math, or it could be a combination of red and orange, or red on LP. They look at priority 5, the graduation rate, which doesn't apply to us, but they look at the chronic absenteeism, red and red on suspension rate. So they have to have, it would be student groups whose performance are in 2 or more, qualify in 2 or more of those criteria. The other eligibility is for additional support, additional targeted support in intervention. So sorry, that should say ATSI and CSI eligibility. So this is a federal accountability. We look at all students for CSI, all red or all red but one, or 5 or more indicators where there's a majority are red. So if there's 5 or more indicators and 3 are red, ATSI is similar, and they look at student groups, and this is for schools. So we could have one school in ATSI, we could have several schools. We'll know in January will be the official release of any of our schools. Last year, and I believe this will be the case for this year, schools that are flagged for additional targeted support, we know that there are sections in the SIPSA where we identify how we're addressing those needs. And we also, those are schools that are identified for Williams visits in the fall. They didn't do that last year because there were so many schools across the county that qualified for ATSI that it was the county office, actually county offices all over the state requested a 1-year moratorium on that just to use the previous year's data. And so this year I'm anticipating we'll have a change in the schools that are visited for Williams. And so we're looking forward to getting that release and letting the schools know so that we can start working on their plans. And at this time, I can take any questions that you have for me or Assistant Superintendent Bowles. All right. Thanks.
No board discussion?
Just one briefly, I really appreciate, I know we all appreciate your diligence and just the presentation. And again, making the information accessible in a way that we can all understand and follow along. I'm just curious regarding the chronic absenteeism, because it seems that, doing some great work and improving, and just what you all found, like what methods or approaches, what things you're doing differently that you are finding effective.
I think it was just a real multi-pronged approach as we were going to the county office and really having a team. I think part of it with the team that went, it wasn't just central office. We wanted to make sure that there was a site related person also at the meetings. We had a community liaison, a principal, school psychologist. And then we had members of all parts of our teams and ed services, from special education to student services, curriculum and instruction, and myself. So I think the composition of the team, the diversity of it, led to some really good discussions. But on top of that, I think it was the messaging, the consistent messaging. I know that Superintendent Monzo really prioritized a lot of videos to send out to the community, as well as it was a topic of conversations with all of our district parent groups, to really getting their input, diving in and having some real kind of honest conversations about why they're, without any kind of blame or shame of why are they having difficulty coming to school and how can we support. We did increase some communication at the site level too, and just systematize some of our notifications that we gave out from central office. We had a common time frame, which we hadn't done before. And then we also put into place just some more outreach to parents. At Anderson, we had a pilot or a practice that we did through differentiated assistance, where anytime a student in particular classes that we piloted, a student with an IEP was absent, then that kickstarted a check-in with the child from the teacher when they came back in person, a positive check-in, not a where were you yesterday, but just kind of really trying to understand, as well as communication to the parent about, we're so glad that they're back in school. Is there anything that you need? I think our community liaisons, social workers were also integral in just checking in with families and talking with them. And the principals also, I think, really tried to increase just positive measures and just renorming that school is safe to come back to. Of course, if you're sick, stay home, but you're safe here. We want you to be here, and it makes a difference when you're here. So it's hard to really know what maybe the magic bullet is, but it's just kind of a combination of some of those things. Superintendent Monzo, if you have anything else you wanted to add to that, but yeah, I think that the focus all throughout the system, I think, certainly helped.
No, I think you highlighted things that come to mind for me. I think it's a continuing effort in this area, because there's still, I think, certainly additional social emotional supports that are needed in our community. One figure that was really incredible was our shift from the number of individual or families that, or students that we're serving that are homeless. I mean, I think we went from like 58 to over 200 or something, or 400, over 400. And so, you know, just that number in and of itself highlights some of the challenges that families may have in being able to have consistency in not just their school life, but just overall in their circumstance in their life as well. And so I think it's, I want to commend our teachers, our principals and staff, and just for highlighting that and being very visible with the messaging around not, as was mentioned, from a shame perspective, but from an asset-based perspective, and what things come, positive things come as a result of us being able to see our kids in our classrooms every single day.
Yeah, we also, with that, just to know, we greatly increased the availability of Ross gift cards for families so that they could go and get, that was some of the feedback we received, is just being able to, the kids to be able to have clothes that and they feel clean and other things that they may need. And so just ramping up those things, as well as transportation support and such. So I think that helped. I think also, of course, we brought in some of the narrative about ADA, but we really shifted it more to that conversation of it just so that they're knowledgeable. It does affect us fiscally, but that's not the real reason. The real reason is that we want them to be in school. So we really kind of tried to shift our message more to that as well, I think, over the past year, just based on some feedback we heard from parents kind of saying, well, you only want us there because you get the money for my kid to be there. And so that was really telling and really important for us to hear, so that we could really kind of pinpoint the true nature of why we want the students to be in school.
Thank you, and I appreciate you leading with compassion and with the intention to meet the needs. It sounds, my just follow-up question to that, I was just curious, you mentioned a couple of just what kind of maybe were the reoccurring or common threads as to reasons why students were absent. And it sounds like transportation being one, and, you know, just having clothes to wear would be another. Were there any other reasons or common reasons? And then also how you were able to meet those needs?
Yeah, the other interesting thing we found just in some data we collected in our kind of cycle of inquiry is that the impact of a family member being sick in the household was almost equal to, if not more so, a factor in the child not coming to school. So just kind of talking with them, seeing, you know, what we could do about even just encouraging the siblings or their older siblings who may be able to walk them to school, even if you just come for part of the day, right? Even if somebody's not feeling well and can't get up that early in the morning, we want you to come even later. So that was another factor that was kind of highlighted for us, that a lot of the times it wasn't necessarily even the child who was ill, but it was somebody in the home who was ill. And so again, just encouraging, even if you're late, we want to see you, even if you can come for part of the day. Or is there somebody else who can help you nearby? In some cases too, when we had to overflow students maybe to other schools because their homeschool may be at capacity, we tried to team them up. The one question we asked them was, would you be open to somebody else driving your child to school? And so if that answer was yes, we looked at, are there other families who are being overflowed to the same school and trying to pair them up? That didn't always work, but we're just trying to look at any avenues to make it easier for them to get to school.
Something I can add too is that across the district at every site, a huge focus on social emotional learning, welcoming and affirming communities in our classrooms, and really leaning into, we have a welcoming and affirming toolkit for through SEAL, where there's unit in the beginning of the year, but it goes beyond just the beginning of the year, welcoming students, getting to know you activities. It's throughout the year. And so when students are absent and they come back, they feel like they were missed, and it's not, they feel like they can easily kind of catch up and pick up where they left off. There's obviously they've missed some of what they've learned in class, but there's, putting methods in place to support them in reintegrating back into school. So that welcoming and affirming and social emotional learning and development is, I know it's in our schools' SIPSAs, it's in their professional learning plans, and there's a lot that schools are doing to evaluate how are they welcoming students. Front offices have really taken a look at their practices and their environment to make their front offices, the secretaries looking at practices to welcome families into the school and just make it a warm environment from the moment they walk in the door.
We actually even had some professional development for all our site secretaries, and also some follow-up to our clerical staff here in the district office related to kind of that topic of welcoming, creating welcoming environments, kind of the customer service type of PD, professional development, and because I think that's another place that is a point of impact, because our front offices is where families and kids come and come back to school, and where that initial contact of, hey, we miss you, or hey, where you been? You're late again. Those type of things really can make an impact on how a student and a family may feel in terms of how they're either being supported or not supported. And so that's another thing that we've implemented and we've provided professional development on, and I will be continuing some of those efforts as well.
I have a quick question. As the discussion started going, is there a way that we're systematically reviewing the phone numbers of our families? I know we tend to have like a lot of changes, right? I mean, every couple of weeks, it could be every couple of months, and I'm just wondering if we're really tapping everyone and just collecting the most up-to-date information. And that's probably a lot maybe on the teachers seeing the students, but I'm curious what you all are exploring.
We have some site level secretaries, amazing secretaries, that as they collect emergency cards, they go through the Infinite Campus profiles to just update, because we tend to get those most up-to-date phone numbers on the cards every year, and the Infinite Campus profile maybe when they first registered in the district. And so there's that. But then actually this year, for the first time, we're going to have every parent verify that information through the parent portal of Infinite Campus. And so I know that our public information officer, Shuchil Singh, is working with our IT department to leverage our Infinite Campus parent portal to have that regularly done, in addition to just parents coming and updating just in the office. But we'll have that once a year annually.
Thank you so much.
Hello, thank you so much for this great presentation. It was easy to follow. Just a quick question, just for my background, for some more background. For the ELA and math comparisons, has this for the African American, low socioeconomic students, special ed, has that been the common trend over the years, always at that low? And what is staff exploring to make these numbers higher?
Well, let me look at trends data. Give me 1 second. off the top of my head. I don't know about over the years. I do have, so I can tell you that, we did have a disruption, but, it kind of look at data going back to 2018. And for our African American, our data is pretty similar, right? For you asked about African American, homeless, and foster. We've actually improved in our homeless and special education over the years. And we used to have more foster youth, so we had some data from several years ago that we don't have now. But some of it has improved, little by little, and some of it is remaining the same. And so that's something, we look at with CASP data as well as dashboard data. When our data is flat, we look at why. What are the conditions that are leading to that data? And so I hope that answers your question, kind of going back and just looking at a little snapshot of over the years, how our data has changed.
Yeah, this actually was a strong point of conversation at one of our meetings with Coffee Klatch, and Ms. Bowles, maybe you can share a little bit about some of the things that we are doing because we recognize that we need to continue to explore additional ways to provide supports in areas where we're seeing patterns that we want to change. And the other part that has also impacted just in terms of trends is generally you look at data and trends, and in order to really evaluate trends, you need a minimum of 3 to 5 years to see what an actual trend may be looking like. And so when you have a significant disruption in terms of the authenticity of data, like we did with that break in our assessment system and the break in our instruction and how we delivered instruction, then those trends are also very difficult to really pinpoint in terms of identifying specific impacts around those trends. And so, I'll allow Ms. Bowles to see if you can share some of those things that we discussed as well with our Coffee Klatch parent group.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also to speak to special education, not to say that there isn't growth that we can still do with them being in orange, but we were heartened to see that they're in, I think, 3 or 4 of the groups. They were one of the few, actually, I think they were the only student group that showed growth in indicators in that many areas. And I know that's been a very big also area of interest and focus in the district. And I know we still have a lot of conversation to have in terms of programs and placement and all of those things, but just to see in their ELA, math, suspension rate, and chronic absenteeism rate, in 4 areas, our special education group has improved in the last year. So still growth to be done. We certainly don't want to say that orange is an indicator what we want any of our students to strive for. We still want to improve, but the fact that they did improve in 4 indicators was something very heartening for us to see. We did have a fantastic meeting, a real honest and a real vulnerable meeting with our Coffee Klatch parents and parents of our African-American students district-wide, where we really took a look and said, here's the data, and we want to work together with you to hear what ideas you have. And so we're going to bring back the data again, actually even more disaggregated by school at the next meeting, because as Director Enna mentioned, unfortunately for our African-American student groups is one of those groups where we get district data, but there isn't a big enough N size at the schools for them to get school data. So we're going to prepare, we can do that internally. We're going to prepare that even though it doesn't come up on the dashboard. And this is the first year we're going to be doing a learning. We're in the middle of a learning series for anti-racist, anti-bias PD for our leadership team. We're going to be doing day 2 next week. Actually in 2 weeks in curriculum and instruction. And we're looking at how we can expand that to the site leaders, maybe through a trainers model. Restorative practices is certainly something that we're trying to look at to address some of the mindset around what may be present in some of the data that we looked at, as well as we're going to be taking a look to see, we have some ESSER 3 funds that we can use to help support. Actually, I was just talking to Associate Superintendent Evans yesterday. One of the things that the parents brought up at the Coffee Clutch meeting was just some high dosage one-on-one either tutoring or academic support that we can provide. So we're going to take a look at what we may be able to utilize for our 7th and 8th graders. We were able to pinpoint it's in our middle school that we're really losing some progress with our African-American student group. So in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, not seeing the drops that we're seeing in 7th and 8th grade. So we're going to really focus our efforts in trying to disaggregate that data to our middle school students. And so those are some of those areas that we've been, looking at, and we certainly have a lot of growth still to do. But appreciate the parents being trusting us to be vulnerable with their honest kind of assessment and perspectives of what they feel like their students can benefit from.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Bowles.
Just to follow, are those parents, the parents are what the students are doing low, or are the parents, which parents are those that are in those meetings? Of the students that are in that low bars, or which parents are those?
Some of them, yes. One of the parents actually did express her, her concern about the academic progress of her students, and that they, she shared herself. We certainly can't share at the meeting the levels of the students and their performance, but she had shared that over the last few years that her child has been performing below standard, and so she really was very connected to the conversation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And I do have a question with regards to the absenteeism. I'm just wondering if we have any data around reported absences, right? So how many parents are actually reporting and calling in? I know there's also something I think on Parent Square where they can report. And the reason for that is I would like to see if we can then go farther and see when they're reporting. I know that they do ask for the reason of absence. If parents are actually reporting and what that reason is. And if we can maybe even expand on that to say, if there's feedback or there's something deeper, give a call back or something like that. So that way we can capture data on the reasons that they're absent, and then maybe also expand on that and give a better opportunity for parents. But I think first too, I'm not really sure what the data looks like on reporting absenteeism, but I have a feeling that they don't too often call in or use that app. And so I would like to see if there's any efforts that we can do to kind of push that and say, hey, if child's not coming to school, we would like you to call in and report the absence, and also let us know what the reason is.
Absolutely. We can take a look at that, that data for you and gather that in summary.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions, board comments? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address the board on this side?
No virtual comments.
Okay, we have one in person.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on I think the strategies, and one of the things also to look at too is that there's a lot of research that shows that for our African American Black students, that what really helps them stay in school, because by the time before they even get to high school, is having teachers who look like them. So one way to address it is, yes, through the families and through our connections and having those relationships, but also in how we are recruiting and where we're recruiting, and having that to be more laser focused also. And then reaching the students that we have, encouraging them to go into education. So it can't just be that we are putting out a wide net. It has to be more strategic than that. I've been in this district, this is my 18th year, and I remember in my interview that we had talked about the achievement gap with that was happening with white Asian students and Hispanic and our Black students. We've been talking about that for a very long time. So to your question, we've been talking about that for decades. So a lot of research has come out, and I think that we can really find a way to be more laser focused in how we are recruiting our educators that we're bringing, especially into the upper grades and especially into our middle schools. Because that does make a difference. It makes a difference when they come to school. It makes a difference in what keeps them at school. So I think that is, I hope that that is something that we're also going to be discussing in like for human resources and how we are recruiting and where we're recruiting and how we're also growing that in our own students for them to enter education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Berlin. There's no further board discussion or public comment. Thank you so much for your presentation. And we will move on to correspondence and board discussion. We may now hear from board members regarding correspondence from individuals or organizations regarding district programs or services. Board members may report on meetings attended or other related district matters. At this time, board members may also report on committee assignments. Do we have any discussion at this time? That's fine.
Just wanted to say I've been involved in the neighborhood associations that are more active in the neighborhoods. I see some are coming up and doing later pickups, so as they come up and start getting more out there, I'm out there joining them. Before COVID, I was really active with many of them, and it's sad that now very few are involved. But yeah, last week during the rain, the Hellier Association there was picking up trash. I joined, and so I was happy to join and clean up around Christopher School.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, and no other board discussion? Great, so with that, that'll lead us to adjournment. May I have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, this meeting is now adjourned at 7:53 p.m.